Hi, I'm Gurjit. Welcome to another In Conversation With. And today my guest is Sara Davison, who's a divorce coach, an author, a commentator, radio presenter, and more. Welcome, Sara.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really pleased to be here.
So, share with us the title Divorce Coach. How did you go about creating that? Or inevitably, I'm sure it was a divorce breakup somewhere.
Yeah, it was actually. It's a great question because you don't dream of becoming a divorce coach at sixth form college going, what should I do? Oh, I know, I'll become a divorce coach. It was really, I went through my own breakup. But before that, I was a coach. So I've been coaching for about 15 years. I'd met my husband, who I thought was my soulmate. We had a global business together. So we had an office in London, an office in Sydney, Australia. My son was one.
Wow.
And literally overnight, I found out that my husband not only no longer wanted to be married to me, he was madly in love with somebody else. And I didn't see it coming. Also, she was 12 years younger than me, which never helps. Stunningly beautiful. Again, that never really helps. And I found out within a matter of weeks, really, that she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is like one of those stories where you read it in a magazine and you never actually think it's going to happen to you.
Exactly. I really didn't think divorce would ever happen to me. I knew there were some challenges, with hindsight, a lot more than I probably admitted to myself. But I always thought you could work through them. Marriage was forever. I'd met my soulmate. So literally overnight, my whole world changed. And I spent a lot of time doing the ugly crying on the bathroom floor, a lot of time phoning my mum and my friends. Really didn't see what the future held for me. So I know that panic and that fear. Ultimately, I had to leave our business as well. So I lost my whole identity really overnight. It just disappeared. And then I was thrown into a very difficult court battle. Even if one of you wants to try and resolve things, if one's hell-bent on making it difficult, the family court system really isn't fit for purpose to support you through that. So I got a lot of experience going through that. And I'd actually flown out to our Australia office in Sydney. And I don't know if this has ever happened to anyone listening, but if your partner has cheated on you and it's been going on a long time, and then when you find out, friends, colleagues, people that work for me started coming up to me telling me when they found out that it happened, because they all knew before me. Pretty much everybody in the company, 200 staff, knew that he was having an affair before I did. So I was in the Sydney office and really lovely members of staff, well-meaning, were coming up to me saying, oh, I'm so glad you know now, Sara. I found out 6 months ago. I found out 3 months ago. This is when I caught them doing this or that.
And nobody thought of telling you. Nobody wanted to confide in,
I think it's difficult because they worked ultimately for me and for him.
Yeah.
And I think it was just put everybody in a really hard position. But yes, as you know, you were thinking, well, why didn't you say something? But also it was like a dagger through the heart of more deception and more things that have been going on. And I remember leaving the office and walking down Balmoral Beach just to get a break. And I started crying again because I was upset, and I was sitting on this beautiful beach crying. And I was like, okay, this is when I had what I think is probably most pivotal moment for me. I just went, you know what? I've had enough of this pain. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done with that. It's time to step up. And that's when my motto, screw you, watch this, was born. And I took my power back really in that moment and decided that because I couldn't find any help, because I'd looked for help and tried therapy, but it wasn't specific enough for me. And as a coach, I knew that you could create tools and techniques, and there were lots of things you could do to help yourself turn things around. So I decided I was going to create everything myself. So I combined my coaching skills of the last 15 years at that point with the divorce process.
What was the coaching in? Was that in business or was that in money? Was there a specific niche that you guys were?
I was coaching, life coaching, business coaching. I'd set my own business up at 21, flying motivational speakers from the States. I've been immersed in self-help, personal development. I'd worked with Paul McKenna, trained with Richard Bandler in NLP, done my hypnosis training, done so many different trainings. So at this point, I was sort of, complete geek for anything self-help. Yeah. So I just combined everything I'd learned over the years with the divorce process purely to get me and my son through. But that is where my mission was born, that I didn't want anyone else to feel the way I was feeling. And if there weren't tools, I was going to create them and share them. And that's why I wrote my first book, Uncoupling, and that became a bestseller overnight. And from there, it literally took off. The Daily Mail got hold of the retreats I was running, breakup recovery retreats. And it just kind of took off from there, because there's such a need, because everyone goes through heartbreak at least once in their life.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm sat here and there's so many parallels
Really?
of what you're sharing, of going, yes, NLP was the route I'd gone down, Richard and Bandler. You have different lineages, as they say, like the Tad James route. And then for me in there, when you were just sharing about your husband, it's like, that's the ultimate, you know, your partner, you've set everything up, you've created a home, a life together. And to not know and to have that many people know your world.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot to come back from. So I wholeheartedly salute and acknowledge you to recreate life. You know, I have so many clients that do come that say my partner's cheated, and we kind of go into who we think we know, who doesn't know, what should they do next, do the in-laws know, do they not know, should we tell the children? I kind of can't imagine, you know, for yourself it was almost like, well, the whole world knows.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the emotions that people don't really anticipate with this is the absolute humiliation and shame that you feel, because you feel like a failure. You feel, well, what's wrong with me? Now, I had a very attractive younger version of myself there to compare, and you could kind of go, well, I bet everyone's thinking, well, it's an obvious upgrade. Not that I was putting myself down, but, you know, when there's a much younger, very beautiful woman on the scene, it doesn't really help your confidence. And actually, I realised it was quite a toxic relationship. And so my confidence wasn't where it is now. People look at me now and say, well, no wonder you coach, you're strong. But I wasn't. I was broken. I had also been in quite a toxic relationship for a long time. So my self-esteem, my self-worth was a lot lower. My son was only 1, so I was still carrying a lot of the baby weight. And, you know, I was, you know, thought everything was okay, ticking along. But yeah, it was the humiliation and shame that I think a lot of people don't realise. It's the heartbreak as well and the betrayal, but the shame is overwhelming.
The shame and the failure are the two that I can relate to, because I remember even if you're going through a say normal, there's no such thing as a normal divorce, there's just like a normal relationship, right?
Yeah.
But what you feel in that moment is you think the whole spotlight's on you and everyone's blaming you.
Absolutely.
And even if you think, you know what, there's 2 of us in this relationship, but somewhere you make it about you know, each of us make it about ourselves, of going, it's somewhere where I've not done something, or I'm to blame, or I'm the failure in this. Like I said, having gone through a divorce myself, and likewise set up a business initially, as I was just sharing with you, was with a ex-business partner. It was unrequited love, and you know, I wanted to set up a relationship and a business, and funny enough, flew out to Singapore and Bali, and that's when this person then told me and said, I'm engaged, and when I get home I'm suing you for the incompetency of our business.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know that. There you go. I always reveal something about myself. But yeah, so I can totally relate. In that moment, I remember being crushed, and like yourself thinking, I thought I was going to be a coach.
Yeah.
But right now I just want to hide.
Yeah.
And I feel humiliated, like I got stopped before you got started.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So like I said, there's lots of parallels in our stories here that feel similar.
I do think that's one of the most disabling emotions, is that overwhelming. We have an overwhelming fear of the future, because what you had planned out is no longer the future. And for me, my whole world was in my relationship, because we worked together, we lived together, we were parents, you know, we had everything combined. So to separate that, I just had no clue what my future was going to be. And I think that's very scary for a lot of people, when you've planned something, you're 100% engaged in that, and then suddenly that future doesn't exist anymore. And also to see somebody else madly in love, your partner with somebody else, is, you know, the whole thing is just soul destroying. And then it's, how do you pick yourself back up from there? Because I think that's the really tough part.
I always a little bit relate, and I don't know if other people do this, relate divorce as like grieving for someone that you've lost that's passed away. We know that someone physically hasn't passed away here, but there is a part of you that you've lost through the process. You're grieving something. And I always often say to people, it's not that you're grieving that person anymore. You're grieving the life that you either had or a part of it, or the meaning that you put to your marriage.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's the case, or that there's some truth in that people go through the cycle of grief effectively, the denial, the shock, the shame, failure before you pick, do you know what I mean? Hit the rock bottom before you come back up.
Well, absolutely. I think there's lots of people don't know this, but divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one. So absolutely, you follow that same grief cycle, the same healing process from grief, which involves going into that denial at first, and then the anger, then the bargaining when you're trying to sort of work out, well, should I stay? Should I go? Is this right? And how can I twist myself into this relationship to sustain it and make compromises and probably sacrifices? And then we go into depression. And then we come out to acceptance. But actually, interestingly, I see a lot of clients that are quite stuck in acceptance, because if you cannot see the future, you cannot move towards it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the challenges here, is that people don't know what the future looks like. They're focused on what's going on in the divorce process and the things that have happened in the past. But if the future looks like a blank canvas or a black hole, then we're never going to be able to move towards that.
Yeah.
So as a coach, and I train my coaches in my training school to do this as well, is throw as much colour on that blank canvas and shine a light into that black hole so that people can start to get momentum and move towards it. Because if you can't see it, you can't move towards it. And that's where being stuck can really be quite debilitating.
Absolutely, because I always say it's the narrative you keep holding about your love life or your love story or your partner, that until you create a different one, you're going to keep stepping into the same one. So we end up I choose to create some either promises or an intention of going, okay, if you can step into those, they're going to create a different world for you. You know, you can only feed one of you, and you can choose which one you want to feed, the wolf that's going to keep you down or the wolf that's going to move you forward.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
So when you found out, like you say, that your world had fallen apart, and there's probably some people out there that are listening, maybe your world is falling apart right now, what advice, or looking back, what would you say are the common things that people should do when it comes to thinking about either divorce or separation? I know what my view would be, but I'd love to hear yours first.
Yeah, I think you've got to be very realistic about it. I think a lot of people will cling to a marriage because it's what they know, and they'll think that they need to save it. And absolutely, going through a divorce is not the easy option. It really isn't. So I always say to my clients that do what you can to save the marriage if you think you can. So this, having the ability to communicate with your partner, if it's a healthy relationship, you should be able to sit down and have that, look, I love this about you. This isn't great. What can we put in place to test out for the next 3 months, just to see if we can hold each other to that standard, and can we change it? Because running into a divorce is not going to serve anyone, especially if you have kids. However, if it's not healthy, or you've tried that and it doesn't work, then ultimately your choice is to get out. And that is a healthy decision if it's not right for you and it's not serving you. So first of all, do the work to try and save it. And if it isn't the option, if you go 3 months down the line, you'll have more clarity. If you're struggling to make a decision, it's because you don't have enough clarity right now. So those kind of exercises, communication, can really help you get that and help you make a better informed decision at the end of that. Secondly, if you are coming out, you need your breakup support team around you, because this is going to be a roller coaster ride. Even if you're both amicable and you're separating and you think, right, this is the best thing, and that's a small proportion of divorces. A lot of them have got more aggression and a lot more negative emotions attached. But you will need a breakup support team. And in my opinion, for that, you need a group of people around you that can support you with the things that you're most worried about. If you're not sure what they are, they're the things that are keeping you awake at night. So if it's money, have someone that can do some budgeting with you. It doesn't need to be an expensive financial advisor. It could be a friend that's great with working out a spreadsheet, going through your bank accounts, helping you look at what that's going to look like. If it's legal advice, get a good legal advisor on your team, and pick someone that is suited to your case, not just someone that a friend's used, because their situation, their story might be different. Yeah. All legal advisors will have a different background, so choose somebody that can really support you. Also, I would say choose a friend or family member that isn't so engrossed in what you're going through, because some friends can pour fuel on the fire, not because they mean to, but because they're so emotionally involved and upset. They feel betrayed, they feel let down, that they let this person into their life as well.
Yeah.
So in some cases, choosing someone that can give you constructive advice rather than, we agree with you, and fueling that passion in you to maybe make decisions that aren't going to help can be better.
Or it goes the other way, that they're so hurt for you, and somewhere they're grieving their own, we've seen it before where, the friend has been divorced or somebody else, and they haven't healed themselves. So they think they're trying to help you, but they could be hindering the matter.
Absolutely.
And just because that's what they went through with their bitter divorce and what have you, I always say, yes, there's people out there that will support you. Some will point you in the right direction, but ultimately, like you said, when you go to that independent advice, and there's lots of it out there, lots of it, through coaches, through legal aid, or through legal professionals, they will already give you the advice that you possibly need. And I know the hardest part is exactly what you're saying, is the clarity and taking their decision and being responsible for it. That's
Absolutely.
what people mostly overwhelm with, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have to make a decision. Like, it's called adulting.
Yeah, but at this point, you're having to make some of the biggest decisions of your life about where you're going to live, who's going to have what, how often you're going to see the kids, who gets the pet. I mean, these are life-determining decisions at a time where you're going through an emotional roller coaster that you're strapped in with very little control over, especially at the beginning. So I think it's important to be able to have that team around you. And I'd also throw in someone that can help you exercise, get out the house, whether that's a dog walking companion or a yoga friend or a gym instructor, whatever suits you. But make sure you are getting out the house and doing some exercise. And like you say, have a professional in your corner that can give you some constructive advice. I think that having somebody who specialises in breakup and divorce is going to be a lot more able to fast track you through than a general practitioner. And I think that's one of the things we find. I created the tools I wish I'd had when I was going through it. So and I set up a training school. We've trained over 700 coaches in 30 different countries now to become breakup and divorce coaches. And also some of them have gone on to train in the domestic abuse specialist area, which is a big area of toxic, narcissistic, coercively controlling relationships as well. So having someone that really understands, what to do when your partner's gone off with someone younger, or how to cope with the school gates, specific techniques of how to tell your kids about a divorce.
It's those moments, isn't it? It's not so much there's one side of you dealing with your impending divorce or impending breakup and so forth, like you're coming to terms with it. Then it's like, how do you tell the extended family? And then, like you say, it's those little moments which you catch yourself. You're probably not even aware that you get to the school gates or something, and takes a moment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You're gonna find that there's different reactions from friends and family. You're gonna lose friends. That's normal. Having someone that's walked in that path. Most of my coaches have been through it, which is why we do it. It's not really a job that you do if you haven't experienced some kind of trauma on that level. So I think that's where we have specific tools, very practical tools, how to have those conversations, how to show up at an event with your child, with your ex turning up, maybe with their new partner. These are the nuances of a breakup that we kind of dive into and can support you with. Most of us have been through it, so we sort of understand it, but then we have specific tools and techniques that I've created that will help you to navigate that journey specifically. So it does fast track you if you've got that specific help rather than general counselling or general therapy.
As I say, it is one of those things, unfortunately. Like, I always say to a couple, make sure every stone is turned over. Like, be content, turn over every stone, and then you're free to make your choice. But if you're literally doing it, like I always say, when emotions are high, intelligence is low. Let's be honest, we can't make informed decisions. We're reacting to stuff. But the moment we are calmed and balanced, which is kind of like I say what my role is or your role is in that situation, is to help that person to regulate the emotions. I know we can't change what may or may not be happening, but once you've gone through your process of healing, you're in a stronger position to take on divorce or dealing with things. I say it needs to happen for both sides, right? Because like you said, talked about the toxic side of the divorce, because I've heard the stories of people just arguing over even the furniture or the china, and you're thinking, really? And in one partner will go, but you hated it when we were married. And it's really weird why that side of people comes out, through the divorce. It brings out, how do you put it, the worst of us. And yet there is a tender heart that's being hurt, and we're aware we're trying to protect that all the time. What kind of things do you tend to see through divorce, or have you come across that, some people are not aware of?
Well, I think you're never going to see the best of your ex during a breakup, even if it's a healthy relationship, even if you both get on and you want to stay friendly. When you start separating two lifestyles, that puts a whole nother level of pressure on you. And it is scary, it is frightening. So you're going to see the worst behaviour. So I think having that communication up front, if you do have a healthy relationship, is key to say, we know this is going to be a bit of a roller coaster. We're not going to agree, but what's our agreement now that we're going to stick to, so we can maintain a healthy relationship moving forward and be friends for the kids moving forward. What I see more of, though, because it's my specialist area, is helping people through toxic relationships and breakdowns, which basically means someone is abusive, so someone is being unkind. And the difference with a healthy breakup and a toxic relationship is that if it's toxic, there's no compromise. There's no willingness on behalf of one side. It's not stubbornness. Stubbornness can be a healthy relationship. I would say on this is cruelty. It can be evil in a lot of cases. So it's someone wants to cause as much pain as possible, and it's all about that, causing more suffering, causing annihilation, because what they're doing is they're using their abuse tactics through the divorce process. And a lot of people very much misunderstand post-separation abuse. I was told, oh, well, don't worry, you're not with him anymore, living with him, therefore it'll get better. Post-separation abuse can be worse than when you're in the relationship, because all the controlling behaviour, all the gaslighting, confusing, all the difficult behaviour is channeled through finances, paperwork and the kids.
Yeah.
And they are the points that are going to really hurt you. And they know, because they've wired you to react in a certain way. So they will push your buttons, and it can be extremely traumatic. And what I find with a lot of clients is going through a divorce process, usually you can't settle and agree, so you're going through the family court process, which really isn't fit for purpose for victims of abuse, because they term it high conflict cases. And high conflict is a bit of a whitewash for abuse, because no one in their right minds would drag their partner through the court process. You go to mediation, you'd figure out a friendly, amicable way through. Nobody wants to waste money on lawyers or arguing it out, or have a complete stranger make decisions for you. Even if you're having to make some sacrifices in the negotiation, that you'd probably do that if it was healthy. So what we find is that clients are being dragged through the family courts by perpetrators who are really trying to cause as much pain as possible. And that's where more damage is done.
Do you think they can ultimately, I'm not going to say get away with it, because obviously people do.
Yeah.
But don't you think that somewhere along the line they come undone in their own relationships?
Well, I think the truth is, if you can be that unkind to somebody, you're not happy.
Yeah.
Like, happy people are not cruel. Happy people do not try and inflict pain on other people. And also, they put the best interest of the child first, whereas perpetrators will do whatever they can to annihilate the other partner. And it's male, female, but predominantly female victims that we see. Because it is, whatever people say, abuse is a gender-biased challenge we have. Although I work with a lot of men dealing with abuse as well, so definitely it goes both genders. So when you're working with clients like that, you do see the trauma, you do see that, but the perpetrator will stop at nothing. And that's the challenge. It doesn't matter who's left in their wake, whether it's the kids or you, it's across the board. Yeah, it is tough, but that's exactly why I created our online support groups as well, because the isolation is probably one of the, again, misunderstood issues around breakup. And I think society as a whole, if you ask what the general problems are, and we go into businesses and work with businesses as well, supporting employees, they will say isolation and loneliness is one of the biggest problems. It's a bit of an epidemic anyway at the moment, all over the world, but especially here in the UK, the stats show that. But if you dig beneath that, that is actually a really common thing for breakups, especially abuse, because isolation is a tactic used because they want to isolate you from friends and family because they have more control. So I created online support groups, and we run 32 hours of Zoom coaching a month that's absolutely free for anyone. And we have people all over the world joining our groups. They're run by my accredited coaches. We have something every day that they can join. They can share their stories, meet other people, find their tribe. Because, as you know, sometimes friends and family get a bit fed up hearing the story.
Not only that, they start to relate to you as well, the victim, unless you pull yourself out of it. Because I feel like until you empower you, people only relate to you by what you show. And if you're constantly on that same narrative, like you say, after a while they'll get bored with you and going, oh my gosh, will you do something about it? And they can only, how do I put it, they can only lovingly push you in the right direction. But ultimately, you've got a choice. And I know that a lot of people sit there with a lot of blocked emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of bitterness.
Yeah.
And until you start to deal with that, and the interesting one that I always hear when I'm coaching couples, like one this week, they've come up to, she's doing this to me, he's doing that. I'm going, but they're not physically doing that. I get that they're making you feel a certain way, but you get a choice how you want to react to it.
Yeah.
And I think until we start challenging people that way,
Yeah.
you know, I used to feel like that. Like I wanted the pain to stop.
Yeah.
Please just give me a pill. I woke up. Please, can this throbbing pain stop?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. But the things like you're saying that you have to do to put yourself back out there, socialise, be willing to, you know, opportunity, I call it, to reinvent yourself. It's those things that are going to move you forward.
Yeah.
And I think help you a lot faster.
I think that's interesting. I totally agree with you. I think I have a technique that I developed, which some people think is a bit crazy, but I think it's so important. And it's called Clap for Your Ex. Now, I don't work with couples. I don't train any of the coaches in my school to work with couples. So we're different to what you do, because having two people in a room is a very different dynamic.
Don't worry, it doesn't happen straight away. People always say that. Is that not like counselling? No, we don't put you in the room straight away. We work with you individually. Emotions are calm, then we can bring you together, because otherwise it doesn't work, as you can imagine.
I mean, we don't go there. But most of the relationships I'm dealing with are quite toxic, and so there's a good reason for that. But I would say that this Clap for Your Ex is a really empowering tool.
Yeah.
It's when you can say, like, and start clapping for your ex and say, you know, thanks so much for the opportunity you've given me here to step up, get stronger. Because when we blame our ex, which is totally normal, but we blame our ex for, because you did this, I feel this way, because they've done this, I'm doing this, because of this, I feel this way. You're giving your power away in every moment that you do that. And what we want to do is take the power back and say, you know what, screw you, watch this, you do you, but I'm going to actually take my power back and move forward in the way I want to move forward. And most people don't realise that they can control how they feel.
Yep.
So we have a choice, and we can dial down negative emotions. And a lot of the coaching tools that I work with are enabling people to take, say, if they're 10 out of 10 and overwhelm and upset and heartbreak, and dial that down even to an 8 or a 7, because that means they might be able to get out of bed or take the kids to school or just process some of the decisions they need to be making in a different way. So I think clapping for your ex is not about condoning their behaviour or cheering them on. It's about, no, thank you for actually, that is actually one of the greatest gifts you could have given me, because now I've got this chance to go on and be happier, to find a different relationship maybe that makes me feel better, or just to improve my self-love so I'm in a better place to feel confident and happy. Because you can replace love with love from friends, with pets, with all sorts of things. It doesn't have to necessarily straight away be going back into another relationship.
Yeah. And I love that, because I know you and I wouldn't be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for our exes. That's how I feel, you know, that if I didn't take the decisions I did. Back then, obviously, it hurt. Back then, you don't know what you're saying or doing. You're just doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And you want life to be different. And trust me, I wanted life to be different. But as time's moved on, like you say, you begin to acknowledge, would I go back to that? Well, I wouldn't be doing this. Wouldn't be making a difference. Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not because the person was horrible, narcissistic or anything. It just that was my choice, right? Just like there is now for yourself. Many people, when they've lived in, how do I put it, long marriages, chronic abuse, or they're not even aware of what's going on and they pick up the habits of their partner, are you able to decipher? Because, you know, yes, it's easy to gender blame or to some level, or to choose a side, but do you think there is a moment in the marriage where you can, even if you're coaching someone, that you can say, hang on a minute, you're not helping the situation here. You're equally at fault or equally fueling the behaviour, shall we say, because we know we can hear it one way from somebody, but often there's, like they say, there's no...
Yeah, I think in healthy relationships, there's a dynamic there. Everyone has to take accountability for their own actions and realise that this is what's happening. But I think it's dangerous with an abusive relationship, because it's never the victim's fault. However, and that's really important, that they know that it's not your fault. However, and as a survivor for myself, I know that we do enable behaviour because our boundaries are so low. We might be, you know, super empathetic or people pleasers, so they'll do something which is unacceptable behaviour. So maybe that's name calling or coercive control. and we go, oh, well, they're having a bad day, or I don't want to bring up any conflict, or, well, I'll stop that up for now because, I can manage that. I don't want to rock the boat. And then as you chip away, because that then enables that behaviour to continue. If you'd gone absolutely no way, like, jog on, I'm not having that. That's not okay with me. That's maintaining your boundary. But because a lot of the time we would choose to sort of go, well, you know what, I don't want an argument, or I kind of get why you're doing that. Or maybe we're scared to stand up for ourselves because we know the repercussions. Then that boundary is eroded and eroded till there's literally no boundary left. So at that point, it's important that it's not their fault, but to understand and learn to spot the signs of toxic relationships so we don't repeat them time and time again. Because quite often victims of abuse will find they haven't just been in one toxic relationship, there's been a pattern, because weirdly it feels safe because it's what we know, it's familiar. So we don't want to repeat those patterns, we want to learn, and I call it honing your radar to spot the signs of the abuse. So that could be, spotting the signs of being unkind and just not thinking, oh, well, I can change them, changing the mindset to go, that's an absolute deal breaker for me, deploy, parachute, exit the building.
Isn't it interesting how many women will literally resist love, because when there's a nice person that comes along and they're being nice to you or loving or kind or doing stuff, they're almost like pushing it away because they're not it's not familiar to them.
Yeah, or they think it's boring, or they're the nice guy. Yeah. But I do think that's self-preservation, and I think it's quite normal, especially if you have been in toxic relationships. And it's about looking at how do you get that excitement, which is sort of the roller coaster, if you want to call it excitement. It's a very unhealthy dynamic, but that, hot, cold relationship.
You live for that high and low. I kind of get it, because it's what makes the relationship. It's the spark of it, right? But when you are addicted to that, like you said, even in the unhealthiest of relationships, that's what you're kind of next looking for, of what bonded you two together for whatever reason. If that doesn't exist, like you say, take alcohol. If that was the reason that brought you two together, and when you're drinking, it's fine, but when you're not, you can't tolerate each other.
Yeah.
It kind of almost creates that, like you say, habitual to going, the only way I can be fun or outgoing or with someone is when I have other aids or other things that can support the relationship. And I guess it's unpacking all of that to say, all right, how do you be in love with you?
Yeah.
How do you come back and actually be comfortable with yourself?
Yeah.
Because I think before, I don't know, but certainly in my point of view, like, you're right, we look to gain love from someone else, right? And when that point of divorce comes, it's usually those feelings, and certainly I was one of those, of going, don't you love me anymore? Rejected, hurt, all of that. But to go back out there into love again, what would you say, somebody would need to considering they've gone through divorce or domestic violence, or, as you said, a narcissistic relationship? What would you be your viewpoint to them?
I think you've got to do the work first. I think it's really important to do the work first. And when I say do the work, it's about looking at learning the lessons from past relationships and banking them. And so that would involve looking at not just what you want from a new partner, because we all know what we want. We know what we're physically attracted to, like tall, dark, handsome, short, blonde, blue eyes. We know that, right? If you ask people, who's your celebrity crush, people will know what they're physically attracted to. But what do you need is a whole different thing. And that will come from learning the lessons from past relationships. So, do you need someone who's emotionally intelligent, someone that's loyal, someone that's kind? So work out what those things are. And then also, I have this really fun exercise that we do with clients, which is how to design your ideal partner. So you're looking at what you want, also what you need, but then also the red flags. So up to 5 must not haves. So things that if they come up, it's not, oh, well, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe I can change them, or, well, excusing that bad behaviour. We're not doing that. At this point, if one of those red flags shows up, so like maybe they're unkind. I had a client who went out for dinner with somebody and they were clicking their fingers at the waitress and being rude. So if anything like that shows up, it's immediate, deploy, parachute, exit the building. This is not I can change them, you're out. And that enables you to date with safety nets, and therefore gives you a bit more confidence. So I think doing the work is key.
Absolutely. And you've probably kind of brought it onto a nice position, whether you're single or starting to get back out there and dating. In my mind, like yourself, I call it relationship manifesto. You can create the ideal person you want. And like you say, you can have in there my non-negotiables, which you're calling your red flags. People that know me, I don't do the social media jargon that comes with it. But in my mind, exactly that of Look for a person that will, have they introduced you to their family? How do they act and respond with among friends and family? You see, in the Asian culture, typically, you didn't meet the extended family until you were married.
Ah, okay.
Right. But now I think as time's moved on, it's a lot more relaxed. And I think it's important, like you're saying, how does someone behave in a restaurant? How do they behave in front of their friends and family? How do they react, when they're drunk, for example? Until you get to know someone, you won't know what their personality is like. But do you think you could ever know someone before you start sharing a home or a life with them?
Well, I think you can get to know who they are, their values, their morals, understanding. I think you can get to know them by their values, their morals, understanding their personality type, for sure. I think it's not ignoring anything that makes you think, oh, because that's your internal burglar alarm system telling you something is wrong. And if you've been in an abusive relationship, that will be disconnected a little bit. And we have to work on trusting our instincts and our gut reaction to things. So I think you can, and I think you definitely should put the work in so that you get to a point where you feel comfortable with that person. And also bring in friends and family. If you're worried about your own decision making, get them to spend time with friends and family. You're always going to have someone in that group that is pretty good at sussing out who that person really is.
Do you think, and coming back to yourself, we'll finish off where we started really, if your husband, say it was a one-off affair and the lady didn't exist in his life and she wasn't pregnant and so forth, so I'm just saying it was just a random act, for want of a better word, not that it's ever random, do you think it's right for a couple, or do you feel within yourself that you could have made the marriage work?
Personally, for me, no, that's just not okay, because I don't want to live my life with somebody that I don't 100% trust. I think that's the foundation of any relationship. And if they can do it once, then in the back of my mind, I'm always going to be worried it'll happen again. So not for me. But saying that, I do know lots of people, and I've worked with people who have got back together. I've even worked with couples who got divorced and then got back and got remarried again. So people can change and people make mistakes, absolutely. But I think that's a really personal decision based on your morals and values, and how, again, it's also lifestyle, how intrinsic are your lives together? Can you separate them? With me, I didn't have a choice. I was catapulted out. That wasn't an option. But I don't think so. It's difficult to say, but in the moment, maybe you make decisions where you try and change and try and do things. But actually, in the long run, for me, definitely the best decision. And actually, what happened to me is now the greatest gift, because now I have a business that helps people all over the world cope better. And it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So for me, I love what I do. It's not really like work. And like you, we're helping people. And I think that's, no one has to feel the way that we felt when we were going through it with the tools that are now available.
I know, it's almost turning, and it is that cliche of pain to purpose. Yeah. And like yourself, those, again, that have followed me know me. I had a corporate career for 20 plus years. I didn't see myself going, oh, let me give that up to do this. I didn't. Like you said, it's not something you say at, careers advisor at school. Yes, I want to be a coach to help people with marriages, and everybody probably going, you what?
I know.
Do you know what I mean? So it's probably similar for yourself, but absolutely wouldn't take that journey away. What is one bit of advice you would give to someone right now who's sat on the fence contemplating, should I stay, should I go?
I think for me, it's not what happens to you in life that impacts you. It's what you do about it that makes you the person you are. And I think if you're in a position where you're not sure, you don't have enough information, so go out there and get some more clarity, whether that's working with a coach to get some questions to take back home, whether that's sort of working out the things that you're not sure about, that you want more clarity on. But when you get that clarity, it will be a fulfilling movement forward. You'll really understand the steps to take. So I think reach out and get help, but don't worry if life throws you curveballs, because it's going to. And obviously you and me are a great sort of proof that you can go to hell and back and come out stronger and more confident. And a lot of the coaches that train with me, they've gone through some horrific things, but actually the healing is actually part of the learning as well. So the more you learn about your situation, take your power back, the future's there for the taking, and you can go on and be happier and more confident than ever before.
Amazing. Sara, I can not thank you enough. Thank you for being here in conversation with yourself. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure. Please join me again next time when I'll have another guest to keep diving into relationships, marriages, and more. Take care.